Hi, I'm Joshua Barnes, and I'm joined by Al Shalloway. And our 5 minute short today is, do we need more than MVPs? And MVPs are something that has for years now been a bit of a buzzword. There's oftentimes confusion with it, or it's used not in the proper context. So, Al, why don't you tell us what we really should be calling these things?
Yeah, well, there actually is a predecessor of MVP before Eric Ries, but I'm not going to go into that. Let's just talk about Eric Ries and Ford. So Eric Ries of the Lean Startup suggested a minimum viable product was the smallest thing you could build to validate the hypothesis that a product was useful. And this is typically when you have a new product. Building new products is a different situation when you're a different situation from when you're extending when you're extending an existing product. So MVPs, as originally defined by Eric Ries, were about I'm building a new product, I'm working with a customer. How do I tell if it's viable? So I build the smallest thing viable and that I can show it to them, they could use it. Now, most of the time people talk about MVPs, they're not in that context. So obviously we do need something new because MVPs are limited to the context of building new products and discovering. You're investing in if this product is viable. Now, where it's used, MVPs have turned into two other things or several other things. And what we need is something else for these other things. But let me first say what these are. One other thing is if it's just a thin slice of anything. Oh, yeah, we got our database up. That's an MVP. No, that's not an MVP. That's taking a step with no value to the customer that moved you forward in the development to get something of value to the customer. So the idea of a thin slice is actually something maybe we need because we say we need a vertical thin slice. And devs understand that. I'm not sure managers understand. Why is it vertical? Why is it called that? Well, that has to do with the architecture. There's a history behind why those are called vertical slices. So we use terms that were generated from the development company, thinking executives and managers are going to understand them. And when they don't, we think they're stupid. Well, we're stupid if we're using terms I don't understand. I see this all the time, where people lament management and stuff or local optimization. And I'm looking, but you guys don't teach value streams. You don't teach global optimization. So the same thing with the MVP. MVP is I'm discovering if I've got a product and it's a thin slice that I can show to the customer. Now, there are two other things we need. One is, what is a vertical slice? It's often used for that. We should not call those MVPs. SAFe actually uses an MVP as the next thing of an epic we can do. Well, that's not what an MVP is. Epics are typically for things we know there's some value. We're just building a next piece of it. So you have this, what's the next thin slice I can do of moving toward the right direction? And what's the next increment I could build? So we actually need both of those. Now we actually have a term for the second one. Net Objectives came up with the idea of minimum business increment because it's a business increment. I'm not going to talk about it in depth here. We'll reserve that for another 5-minute segment. But MBIs can handle this idea of the smallest chunk of value that I could deliver when I'm enhancing an existing product. MVPs should be the smallest step I could take by giving value to the customer. A thin vertical slice, maybe we need a better name for that. It's an end-to-end, it's a demonstrable, maybe that's it. We want a small demonstrable piece of functionality we can show the customer. That's a mouthful. So what's a name for that? So those are the two other things we need besides MVPs. But I'll tell you what we really need to stop doing is stop misusing the names. The Agile space, I got to shake my head. See, I'm shaking my head. Misuses terms more than any other place I've ever been with no regard to it and heavily defends its ability to do it. Says, oh, well, that's their thing. They can call it what they want to. And I say, well, I don't agree. So that's basically is not 5 minutes, but that's basically it. We need more. We need the smaller slice and we need the bigger thing when you're investing in new return, not discovering if something is of value, which is what the MVP is. We just ought to stick to Eric Ries's definition since that's been best documented.
Yeah, it definitely gets confusing, and it's tough with stakeholders. It's tough with, team members, managers, you name it, where that type of a misuse of term versus, just having a term that has meaning to a specific organization and their context, but something that, it should be much more sort of universal so we know what we're talking about. All right.
And actually, for anybody watching this, if you have a good term for the slice that's end-to-end functionality that isn't valuable in and of itself, but can demonstrate you're moving in the right direction, that's smaller than an MVP, if you get an idea, put it in the comments. I'd be interested in what good term for that would be. Maybe somebody's already got one. I still use vertical slice, but I understand it's not always understandable. Anyway,
all right.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.